Hi, I'm Pamela Davis, welcoming you to part two of our episode on the evolution of consciousness in the Reincarnation Chronicle. And we were talking about the evolution of consciousness up into the animal kingdom before it leaps into the sphere of humanity, the human being. And one thing that I really want to mention that I think is so wonderful is that animals are known to definitely reincarnate, especially pets. And with the work that I've done, I've been able to interview a great many animal communicators. Some of them are people with advanced degrees. There's a Dr. Lori Moore up in the Bay Area with a very flourishing practice in psychology, and she's addresses audiences all over the world, and she is a very gifted animal communicator who had a wonderful experience with her own cat that she calls Jessie Justin Joy, who helps her in her work, makes stunning observations about her patients, and whose life was cut off when he got out and was grabbed by coyotes and torn apart. Well, rather than be completely overcome by grief, which she normally would have been, she had the clear idea that he was trying to tell her not to worry, that he was coming back. And it wasn't too long after that, a while anyway, that she felt the irresistible urge to go to the animal shelter. And there, up in a high cage, she heard this very distinctive meow that sounded just like the cat that she had loved and lost. And she just knew that this was the guy who had come back. And she took him home, and he immediately began to walk around the house and do all kinds of things that the first Jessie Justin Joy had done. And so she knew that he was back. And as a matter of fact, in my own life, and I would be, even though I believe animals reincarnate, I don't believe I've ever experienced it until just a few months ago, when I adopted this adorable little orange tabby cat, who was so irresistible because he reminded me of another orange tabby that had, I believe, really saved the life of my youngest daughter a number of years ago. And this little orange tabby, the original one, his most favorite thing to do was to fetch. He could fetch faster and better than most dogs. And we just had to make sure that he had things that were small enough and soft enough that he could grab them in his mouth, and then he would bring them back and deposit them right next to my hand and anybody who played with him. And this was just one of his most adorable things that he did. And the other thing that he would do, it was to flirt with us and run along just a few steps in front of us and then flop down onto his back with his little four paws up in the air and wiggle back and forth and look at us and just, dare us to reach down and pet his beautiful little white tummy. Well, a couple of months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, I thought, I wonder if this little cat could be taught to fetch. So I had a little thing, like a little softball, and I threw it in my bedroom. The kitty ran after it, grabbed it, and brought it back to me immediately. It took about 5 minutes for this cat to run after whatever I threw, bring it back right next to my hand. And in fact, he did it with even more expertise than the original kitty had done. And then now recently, in about the last 2 weeks, he's begun to do this thing of running in front of me, flopping down on his back and turning over with his little feet up in the air and wiggling like, oh, touch me, touch my belly, So in my own mind, I'm at this point I have no doubt but that this is the little kitty that's come back to continue to play with us and to enjoy the life that he had where we loved him so much. So animals, oh, and then wonderful thing happened, I think very recently. I don't know if it happened in the last couple of weeks, but I believe it hit the media very recently. In Rome, at the Vatican, a child, a little 9-year-old boy, was very, very sad because his dog had died. And he was able to talk to Pope Francis and asked him something but something in general like, why can't my dog go to heaven? Or is it true that my dog, I'll never see my dog again, he can't go to heaven? And Pope Francis put his arm around this little boy and he said, you'll see your dog again in heaven. God's heaven is open to all God's creatures. So I was stunned because I'm sure that no Catholic Pope has ever said this ever to anybody before. So this is, I think, a real leap in understanding that we're getting now. All right, so let's talk about what happens when animal consciousness then comes into the realm of the human being. At this point, this is when that divine spark of individuality, that immortal divine spark that we talked about as being part of the angel souls that are carrying us forward, that divine spark is what then comes into the primitive soul material that has emerged out of the animal kingdom. And this is, these are young souls, as they say, human beings that are coming in at a very simple level. These would be people with pretty primal, primitive urges, and perhaps not the interest or capability of delving into anything very deep, but this is where they're beginning to become familiar with their human body, the human instrument. But at that moment, the moment that divine spark is lodged in the heart, where the seed atom is lodged, this is when choice becomes available. And the moment you have choice, you have karma, because karma is the engine that runs reincarnation. And so your choices that you make, the choices that you make begin to have consequences. Now, at the primitive level, the consequences can be, pretty scary. These tribal communities, for example, that engage in, for example, head hunting, like they did. I don't know if they still do that in the Amazon, but they did up until rather recently. And you've got other primitive societies where ritual killing takes place and all kinds of things like this. But they're generating karma. And the karma then has to be taken care of. Through successive lives, then, the soul is beginning to, as it generates karma, each soul then generates the life that it's going to live and the conditions in which it's going to live. And if the conditions have been, the choices have been pretty brutal, the lives that they are, and the circumstances that they're born into could be pretty tough. Now, in the East, the eastern part of the world, karma in Hinduism and Buddhism on the level of mass understanding is considered to be punitive, as a punishment, and something to get away from, Their emphasis is on escaping the wheel of karma, escaping the world of suffering. And but the higher understanding of karma is more of a state of cosmic harmony that is being disturbed by negative action. And therefore karma is the opportunity to set it right and to reestablish balance. It's not an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It's the opportunity to recognize the error that one has made and to recognize how one can choose to do things and live differently. Lord Buddha said that karma is at the heart of it is love. The end of it is peace and consummation sweet. So in the East, this is the understanding that they have. Now in the West, we haven't been so familiar with the concept of karma very long, and so you have a lot of neophytes that began, especially in the 50s and 60s, and particularly with the advent of the Beatles, to think that reincarnation sounded really exciting. You could, wow, you could come back if you wanted to, and this sort of thing. And just because you think it would be exciting to come back doesn't mean that karma is real, or that reincarnation is real, just because you feel like you'd like to come back. On the other hand, you find, and I found this throughout my life, that you'll run into people who would say, oh my goodness, no, don't tell me I have to come and do this again. Absolutely not. No, once is enough. So I'm not coming back. No siree. Well, again, just because you feel like you don't want to come back also does not mean that reincarnation is not real. So there is another mandate in operation here, and that mandate is to gain understanding. And it's not necessarily through punishment. For example, if you accidentally injure somebody through lack of patience, someone, say through lack of patience, gets into an accident, or that you create a condition where there's an accident, somebody loses an eye, for example, that doesn't mean that you have to come back in the next life and experience that same kind of injury. That doesn't necessarily mean that you would learn patience, which was the whole point. But you might come into a situation where you have to have patience to perhaps spend years in the care of someone you love very much. And you have to develop an attitude of loving forbearance and patience, and learn the virtues of that, and how to be calm in the face of urgent situations and so forth. So we're going to be looking into a lot more of the different situations that arise out of karma, and the ability of the human being to choose, and the implications of those choices and what can happen. It's really very exciting, and I'll look forward to talking with you further about this in upcoming episodes. So thank you, and I'll see you soon.